Hey, how's it going, guys? I thought I'd show you some of the techniques I used to make this image here. It was kind of a fun process, so I thought I'd go over it. Um, so honestly, it's just a collection of a couple small tricks. But let's just go over it. So the first thing for the tentacles is just I just made this little box. Nothing fancy. Added a subdivision modifier on it. One thing you might notice that the bottom is I deleted the face down there just so it makes kind of this nice pointy shape. Um, yeah, so from that, basically all I did was I applied the subdivision modifier so that I get all those faces. Then I'm using the really kick-ass tissue tools. Hit the dual mesh option, which gives me this lovely patterning, which is really awesome. And then to make the tentacle, all curvy and whatnot, I use the curve modifier. To do that, I'm going to add a curve to the scene and then add the curve modifier to this object. So when you're using the curve modifier, you really want the curve and the object that you're using it to be at the same uh, position in world space. So I'm going to snap the cursor to selected. That puts the cursor down there, so that when I add a curve, I know that it shows up in the exact same spot. Its origin is the same. Cool. So now I've got a curve, and if I select my tentacle thing over there, I'm going to add a modifier, add the curve modifier, and then I'm just going to pick the curve to use. So you might notice that my tentacle here, it's it's in the Z direction going up. So I need to set the deformation axis to that. So there you go. And I really like the curve modifier. It's a lot of fun to play with. So if I edit the curve now, you can see, can just you can make the tentacles do whatever. Yeah, so that's fun. Once I did that, I basically duplicated the tentacles and made a bunch of curves and whatnot. I set up the camera and I did most of my editing from this sort of view so that I could check my composition. Yeah, so that's about it. As far as the material goes, I made a kind of basic material using a shader that mixes between a white diffuse and a black diffuse, and then uses layer weight, the facing angle, to actually set it. So this basically means whatever angle you're looking at it from, you probably mostly get white, and then the more glancing polygons, they go to black. Just to make this obvious, and do something like this. Oh, you can see it mixes between them. So there's the rendered view. So that's cool. I'm gonna put this back to black and white. Cool. So basically, I just rendered that scene out. Rendered that image. Let's see what happens if I hit 12. Yep. So, ta-da. I went to image, save as, and I saved the image. Cool. So that gives me the image, and I'm going to use that information, like the darks and the lights, that shading, to control the tessellation. So to do that, I'm going to need to select all my little tentacles here, and I'm going to duplicate those onto a new scene, or sorry, onto a new layer. Let's move those over to, let's just say that layer. All right, so I've got all these individual objects, and I just need to run through and apply their curve modifiers, because what I'm going to end up wanting to do is have them all just be one single object. So I need the modifiers to be applied so that nothing wonky happens when I join them all together. All right, is that all of them? I think that's all of them. Cool. All right, so now I'm just going to select all of them, and I'm going to hit Control J to join them. And that means now I've got one single object, which is cool. All right, so here's one of the tricks. Is I've got my scene view over here. I'm sorry, my rendered image. And let's just open up the image that I saved to that. There it is. All right, so that was my rendered image here. And now I'm in my camera view. And if I hit U to, I'm sorry, if I'm in edit mode, select everything, hit U to unwrap, I can project from view, which is awesome. So that means that my polygons and stuff all line up in the UV map exactly to the rendered image, which is awesome. Okay, cool. So moving right along. So now the next trick is I need to get these pixel values, like the dark values and the white values, into vertex weights, because that's what the tissue modifier for its tessellation uses. All right, so to do that, there's kind of a little trick. Let me close this. So I'm going to add a modifier. I'm going to use the Vertex Weight Edit modifier. Super fun. To do that, I first need to actually have a vertex group. So add vertex group. I'm going to pick that group. I'm going to say group add just to make sure it gets in there. I'm going to make myself a new texture. And then for that texture, I'm going to load up that that image. Okay, so if we go over here into weight paint, we'll notice that it isn't doing anything. And it's a little weird, but to get the vertex weight set up right, you have to actually change the fall-off type from linear over to a custom curve, and then just reverse this, which still looks all sorts of weird over here, right? But no worries. The next thing we need to do is change the texture coordinates from local over to using that actual UV. And here we go. Now it's looking right. If we go into our view, we can see that the vertex weights are actually set up, and they match the image, which is awesome. It's probably worth noting that if you're not looking at it from the view of the original camera, it gets kind of weird, but no worries. So we've got that. Now that's a good chunk of the puzzle here. The next thing is we need to use the Tessellation Modifier, and to do that we need two things. We need the actual object and then the shape that we're going to tessellate onto it. So let me duplicate this and move that over to here. So this guy is the seed shape that I'm going to use. So it's a really simple square. It's just divided up into 3 little sections. Now, the important part about this thing is that it's using shape keys. If you're not familiar with shape keys, it basically just allows you to have one object and you can define a couple different states as far as where the the vertices should be. So right here, you start off with a basis, and then you can set up as many keys as you want. This kind of stuff's actually used for facial animations and stuff when you want to make a face change the shape of its mouth or something like that. But I added a key value here. Now if I select that key and then hit tab, I can go in and edit that. So you can see for this I edited it so that there's a black stripe up here and then it's mostly white. And then I've got this gray line here. And if I blend between those, you can see all I'm really doing is just changing how much of that white line is exposed. So this is the thing that a tissue modifier uses with those vertex weights. Basically go through each one of the polygons and when it's tessellating this, show how much of that shape key is applied. All right, so with that, now we can do the fun. So I'm going to first select the object here, and then I'm going to select that shape. The order matters, so make sure that you get that right. And then I'm going to go over to create, Tessellate. So when you do this, there's a couple things to make sure that you have checked here. So definitely want to use modifiers, so that way we get our vertex weights in. Then the fill mode, I'm going to use fan. It defaults over to quad. And then lastly, just make sure you hit map vertex group and use shape keys. So when I hit OK, this is going to take a second, but it'll do its thing. Oh dear, that does not look right at all. Does not look right at all. Why is that? Let me see here. Oh, did I leave it on quad? I said don't do it, and then I did it myself. Figures. Alright, so let's let that chug away for a second as it figures out where all those new faces should be. We're making a whopping 67,000 new faces, which is a lot of fun. It does make the computer run a little bit slow sometimes, but just to make it in the first place. Alright, so if we look at just that object, there it is. So that's the main thing now. Yeah. If you look at it from all different sides, you can see we've got our object. Yeah, that's it. Basically it. Once you get past that, then all that's really left is I set up a different, like I made a little background image here, and then I use proportional editing to kind of move things around. Yeah, a little bit of rotating, a little bit of scaling, just to make something kind of a fun background. And then I did that same tessellation to it. Yeah. And then you end up with a scene that looks like this, which is super fun. And then I set up a little animation just for kicks. Yeah, all right. Well, talk to you guys later.